Okay, good evening, everyone. Noswaith dda, chroeso. Good evening and welcome to the second winter talk of the 2020/2021 season. And this is a first this evening, because rather than speaking to someone in the museum in Cardiff, or like last month talking to Alex Wharf, who lives near Porthcawl, this time we're slightly further afield, because I'm delighted to say that David Hemp, who has been resident in Australia for the last 12 years. As I'm sure many of you know, David has recently taken up an appointment as a women's coach in Pakistan. And so this evening, joining us live from Lahore is David Hemp. Good evening, David.
Hi, Chogga, how are you doing?
I'm very well, very well. And you don't look a day older than when I saw you last a few years ago. And I'm sure although maybe a few grey hairs, everything still sound. Well, what I'm going to do is start off the evening by hopefully sharing a PowerPoint with everyone with some of the highlights of your career. So I just need Frosty, who's managing this, just to allow me to share the screen. Here we go. So I've got a few pictures to share with you of some of your highlights from your career with Glamorgan. Now, I have to say, I think Chesney Hawkes might be the name that features here, but certainly here you are as a young Glamorgan cricketer. And in fact, I've got an even earlier one, because this dates from the late 1980s, when you were first on Glamorgan's staff. Here you are in the late 1980s at Sophia Gardens. You can see the old media centre and part of the seating at the river end behind you. Well, you made your Glamorgan second 11 debut in 1986. You were still a student at Millfield School, and then you made your debut 2 years later for the Glamorgan Colts team. And I know we've had a lot of questions which have come in, and one of them, which we'll cover later on, is about the role of the Colts team in developing young talent. I'm sure something that's very close to your heart, given your role now as a coach. And in 1991, you made your Glamorgan first team debut, making your debut, I think, in a Sunday League game at the Oval, and then a championship match against Hampshire at the Old Ground in Southampton. And in 1992, there you are on the right-hand side, Matt Maynard there on the left, picking up an award, and you're picking up the award there. That's at Abergavenny. Because you'd been voted the ASW Young Glamorgan Player of the Year. Lovely to see the old traditional caps there, with Matt wearing a first team cap, and I can see there, Hempy, you're very proudly wearing your Glamorgan second 11 cap. For those of you who don't know, the second team have a cap with the daffodil in bud, rather than with Matt, where it's in full bloom. Well, of course, you were part of the Glamorgan squad in 1993. I'm not going to ask you the question about Crofty singing. We all know he sang Delilah on that occasion, but we'll be talking about those wonderful days with Viv, with Hugh, and of course the gentleman on the left there, who I'm delighted to say several former Glamorgan colleagues of yours on the call tonight, and we can see Alan Jones on the left there, who of course was Glamorgan's director of coaching, as we won the Sunday League for the first time at Canterbury in 1993. Well, 1994, you made your maiden first-class 100. I think it was against Warwickshire at Edgbaston. And there you are now being presented with your full Glamorgan cap. So you can see it's no longer in bud. And there it is, the daffodils are blooming. And you can also just see there behind another colleague from the successful Glamorgan teams of the 1990s, Steve Barwick. And maybe we'll talk about Steve's approach to training maybe a little bit later. In 1994, you were also chosen to make your debut for England A, and you went to India and Bangladesh that winter. We'll talk about some of the other people who were on that trip who've, like yourself, gone on and achieved great things in this wonderful game. You did have a small spell away from Glamorgan. There you are in your days as a bear, sponsored by Nando's. I'm sure you made great use of their food. I should say that other outlets are also available. But then in 2002, you returned to Glamorgan and you played a vital innings against Kent at Canterbury. That game when Glamorgan won again the Sunday League title. In the background there, I think that's Mark Elam. You've just flicked down to...
Nick for 4.
Sorry?
Nick for 4.
Yeah, and Paul Nixon, I showed a minute ago there. There we are, Jack Russell. I don't know what it is about wicket keepers, but they're quite conversational, aren't they? And Paul Nixon there wondering what's going to happen. But we'll talk more about that wonderful day at Canterbury a little bit later on. And of course, we'll talk about the celebrations, some of the other, some of your contemporaries in the Glamorgan side. I'm glad to see there you are. You've got a drink in both hands. I know you're a lefty with the champagne there, but you've got another bottle I can see there in your right hand. And you can see the team there celebrating. Captain Steve James, who was injured on that occasion. We can see Darren Thomas, Mark Wallace, just going along the back row there. Urge Mustafa, the physio, David Harrison, Dean Kosker, Michael Powell, Michael Kasprowicz, Andrew Davis. You can see Adrian Dale. And then at the front, there's Owen Parkin. And also in that middle row, alongside Steve James, there's Matt, there's Crofty, and Ian Thomas. Well, in 2004, you were a member also of the Glamorgan team that won the one-day league again, and the title was won up at Colwyn Bay 2 weeks before the formal presentation at Sophia Gardens. And again, many of those names I just mentioned in the team there. We can see in the back row, though, a great man, sadly no longer with us, John Derrick, JD, a fine coach. Again, we'll talk about John, his strengths as a coach a little bit later. We can also see Matthew Elliott, who I know you've been very close to as well since moving to Australia. 2004 also saw you, David, play at T20 Finals Day. And I mentioned Matthew Elliott a few minutes ago because in the quarter-final at Cardiff, a partnership between you and Herb helped to win the game and secure a place for the Glamorgan Dragons for the first ever time at Finals Day at Edgbaston. You then became Glamorgan captain, and I was thinking long and hard over the weekend when putting these pictures together, which one from your phase in charge to include. I couldn't resist this one from a photo call in 2007 when you were all modelling your Canterbury Under Armour, and you can see there you are sat, the pecs and all the abdominal muscles to the fore there in the front row. alongside Simon Jones, again, another star in the Glamorgan side. We can also see on the back row some of the other, maybe lesser known faces, maybe less muscular, such as James Harris and Hugh Waters there in the back row, and Aaron Shingler also in the back row next to Gareth Rees. And Aaron, of course, has gone on to great things in the Welsh rugby setup. In the middle, we can also see other contemporaries of yours going from left to right in that middle row. We can see Ryan Watkins, we can see Adam Harrison, Nicky Peng, Mike O'Shea, Richard Grant, Dan Cherry, and Ben Wright. Well, you are able, just like in the photo here, to look back. You can look back on a very profitable time in your first class career. 15,520 first class runs at the very, very healthy average of 37. I know the benchmark many batters like yourself would say is 30, but 15,520 first class runs with 30 first class hundreds in total in your career. Of course, you've also spent time playing in Bermuda, the country of your birth, and I'll be trying to find out why in a few minutes' time when we go into conversational mode. Of course, it allowed you to play in the World Cup. You actually became one of the first homegrown Glamorgan players to appear in the World Cup in 2007. And of course, it gave you a chance to rub shoulders with some of the great stars of the emerging nations. Dwayne Leverock there, you're about to celebrate there with the great man taking a wicket. Now, since retiring, as I said, you've been resident in Australia, coaching and enjoying great success with various women's teams in Australia. And I'm sure everyone on the call this evening joins with me in sending their congratulations to your appointment a few months ago as head coach of the Pakistan women's team. And I'm sure that's something that we're going to be talking about a little bit later on. So those are the very much the headlines in your playing career. So now it's time for David, me to ask you just to elaborate. So born on the 15th of November, 1970 in Hamilton, Bermuda. What led the Hemp family to be out in Bermuda?
Yeah, I get first of all, Trogger, just good evening to everybody. I just want to say, look, thank you very much for the opportunity to have a chat with you, and it's great to see so many familiar faces on the line, and certainly appreciate the support that you're showing through this. Yeah, well, you'd have to ask Mum and Dad, but Dad got offered a job in Bermuda. It was either there or Johannesburg, and he decided Bermuda. Hence myself and my brother were both born there. The question I often ask is why we returned in 1975, but he can elaborate more at some other time.
So really, your cricketing education as a youngster then had of the island. It had more to do with the sunshine of Swansea.
Yeah, like I obviously had a small cricket bat when I was there, but it did start back in South Wales. Obviously watching Dad to start with on a Saturday afternoon. He was playing for Fanoni, so we often, myself, Tim, and a few other friends would jump in the car, go along. Wouldn't watch a lot of cricket, but we'd just play on the side of the pitch where Dad was playing, and I guess that's where the interest in the game started. Also spent we're fortunate to live in a house that had a double garage, and when it rained, the cars were out the garage, a bit more space to play in there. So I guess that's where it all started. And then I guess I got hooked at the age of 10 or 11 when I got invited to indoor nets, winter nets. And I know Alan's on the call, and Alan was Alan and Barry Lloyd actually were the first two coaches that I came into contact with, followed by Stuart Owen at Swansea and then Tom Cartwright. So in those first sort of early years of 10, 11, 12, those are the sort of four coaches that had a big influence on, and certainly I felt I had a big influence on my cricket and certainly on my cricket career.
You were a left-hander, and around that time when you were in your early teens, there was another very graceful, very elegant left-hander, as well as Alan Jones in the Glamorgan team. But in the England team, there was David Gower. And I know when your career subsequently developed in the 1990s, quite a few very astute observers of the game likened your style very much to David Gower. So really my question now, Hempy, is are the Hemp family a family of left-handers? And if not, why was it that you decided to become a lefty?
The answer is no. My brother plays snooker left-handed, but that's it. Everyone else is right-handed. I think it was it was actually an uncle of mine that was over, and I was batting right-handed and couldn't hit the ball. It's actually over in Bermuda, and I was batting right-handed, and obviously wasn't very coordinated. So he flipped me around and got me to bat left-handed, and it worked. I think it was Uncle Eddie was in fact my uncle who was it's his fault, I guess. So that's where the left-handed business came from.
And did you have any heroes when you were watching cricket on television?
Gower was one. I went through a period where, I mean, obviously David Gower was well known, and some that I would watch a lot. But for me, it was any left-hander that was playing for England. David Smith went through from Surrey and Sussex. I sort of watched him a little bit. Gower was obviously very elegant, but any left-hander that I felt I could learn from was someone I would watch. But Gower would be the pinnacle of it. I got a really funny story actually. I wanted to. It was a game down in Hampshire, and I was sharing the room at the time with Stephen Barwick, and as you know, Basil was late to bed and early to rise. So at 7 o'clock, I always get the little tap on the shoulder, make me a cup of tea, pick up the paper from the door, which was the Sun, which I would. And we get to breakfast by 7:45. By 8:15, we were making our way to the ground, and Harper State would be there, and he'd say, "Right, let's go over the nets." So I was very fortunate that Basil would go and bowl to me in the nets as a young player. But on this one occasion, we pulled in at the ground at Hampshire, the old ground there, and used to walk from the change room across the car park to the nets. And Robin Smith was about 8:15. Robin Smith was having a net with his dad. His dad was over from South Africa, who I knew because I spent some time in Durban playing at the same club that Robin was at. And he was square cutting. Not that he needed to practice that, but he was on the bowling machine square cutting. So that's, and I walked past John Smith and said, "Oh, hello, John. How are you? Nice to see you. And how long's he had you in here for?" He said, "Oh, we arrived at 7:15." So he'd already been there an hour hitting balls. Got into the changing room, and as I got in, Gower walked down with Paul Terry, and Basil said, "You should go and watch Gower have some throwdowns." So I don't really want to be seen to be doing this. There's no one else around. I thought this is going to look a little bit odd, but anyway, I picked up a bat and some gloves, and off I walked, following these two. I dread to think what they were thinking. Got into the net. Paul Terry was feeding. He threw a half volley. Gower stroked it through cover for 4. Threw another one. Stroked through cover 4. Threw another one. And said, "Thank you, Paul." Turned around and walked away. So you had two extremes. With Gower hit 3 balls in his preparation, and Robert Smith was about an hour and a half on the bowling machine. That was quite a good learning experience for me. Disappointing because Gower only hit 3 balls, But actually, for me, it was quite interesting to watch how two people prepared differently, which I can go on to in terms of coaching and what that means in coaching.
Yeah, life is all about experiences, and I think that's and opportunities, and I think certainly that's something that's stood you in good stead. Now, mentioning opportunities leads me on to my next point, because you clearly were a young cricketer in the Swansea area of promise, and you had an opportunity to further your development at Millfield School, the famous school in Somerset. So when did you go there?
I went there in '86, so so for the last 2 years for A levels. Yeah, look, very fortunate to get the opportunity to go there. Cricket was full time, as was football, because I played a bit of football there as well. But from a cricket point of view, we play Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday, so 3 full days, and then we train twice, sometimes 3 times a week. So it was a full-time cricket experience for that summer term, which was excellent in terms of learning. The practice facilities are very good, but the opposition we played against, so we didn't just play against the other well-known public schools, also played against a lot of men's teams, and I felt that was, in terms of being stretched and challenged, that was actually really good, because they were obviously trying to beat you because of the reputation of the school. I just felt that you're playing against quicker bowlers that like to chat, which again added to the experience. So really fortunate to have that opportunity to go down there for a couple of years. Didn't do my studies any good, but from a cricket point of view, it was very worthwhile.
Who were your contemporaries there at the time?
So we really actually had a very good, we had a very strong side. So Ian Ward was in that side, who's obviously well known through Sky at the moment. A guy called Jeremy Hallett, who played a little bit for Somerset, opening bowler, who had to retire through injury. Ian Fletcher opened the batting. He also played at Somerset, had a couple of very successful years. Bobby Dawson played at Gloucester, played a lot on their one-day side. Myself, I'm trying to think who else was there. A couple of others played some second 11 cricket. So right. It was a strong side.
Yeah, almost like then a finishing school for aspiring county players. And you said about playing against men being important in your development. At the time, Glamorgan had a team in the South Wales Cricket Association, and Jim Presty, one of the coaches, along with Alan. How important, and John Steele, of course, I should say as well. But how important do you think those experiences in the Glamorgan Colts were, David, in your ongoing development?
Vital for me. I was playing at Swansea at the time, which was a good experience, because we had Richie Richardson and Keith Arthurson as overseas players. So obviously playing alongside those was beneficial, because they were test players. So it was good to learn from them. But in terms of opportunities to bat, it was quite limited, because you wouldn't necessarily get in. So the opportunity to play in a Colts team, I think, was an excellent grounding for lots of reasons. So initially it was Alan Lewis-Jones was actually the captain the first year, and then Alan took after the second year. Well, I just think the whole experience, you wore a shirt and a tie and a blazer. You had lunch before the game. You all met up. It was done very professionally, and it was setting you up to actually prepare you to play second 11 cricket or first 11 cricket for Glamorgan. And that's why I loved it. The other point, the big point for me in terms of learning was, again, because we young kids turning up in blazers and everyone else sort of coming off the beach in their flip-flops. We sort of we weren't particularly well liked, and everyone wanted to beat us. And I think that grew the group close together. I think it's enabled us to grow together, because we were people were challenging us, and yes, we had some natural ability and some talent, but I think that was the catalyst that brought us all together, because we, sides were looking to line us up. And I think this is where the leadership was really good as well, in terms of Alan Lewis to start with, that played it and challenged the players to play in a certain way, and Alan did the same thing. So we had some really good role models to learn from, but for me, it was essential in terms of that fast tracking, if you like, my opportunity to make my debut.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, 1991 in a Sunday League game against Surrey at the Oval. Did you get a good night's sleep before making your debut?
Yeah, I wasn't. I didn't. Yeah, that was something I didn't worry about at the time. I remember Chris Bullen got me out LB sweeping. I couldn't rotate the strike, and I think it was either 1 or 3 I scored off about 8 or 9 balls. So the sweep was a last resort. He bowled around the wicket, and yeah, it was a poor option for someone who didn't sweep very well. But again, great experience to play at the Oval, to make your debut at the Oval in a one-day game. But I certainly don't remember being up all night sort of sweating on it. Good.
And I know you then made your championship debut, as you said earlier, at the old Southampton ground against Hampshire. I think Raj Maru may well have got you out.
Raj Maru bowled for 8. Off the mark with a thick outside edge, the third man for 4 off Cardigan Connor. And I got 4 out in the second innings, so not a great debut across either one day or 4 days.
Yeah, but the 4s, Hempy, look all the same in the scorebook.
They do.
I don't put a different symbol down in the scorebook. It's just a 4's a 4's a 4. Well, I mentioned Hampshire because I know in 1992, I think it was, there was quite a remarkable game between Glamorgan and Hampshire at the United Services Ground in Portsmouth. I can remember I was there working with Don Shepherd and Edward Bevan on Radio Wales, and we were broadcasting from a metal porter cabin. Everything went okay, except on the final afternoon when a thunderstorm started to brew, and I've just got these memories of you out in the middle with a certain Malcolm Marshall running in with bolts of lightning on the skyline, and people starting to scurry around, taking their chairs away. And here we were live on Radio Wales. The show had to go on, and I'm thinking, is there a lightning conductor around? I'm sure you had different thoughts going through your mind when you were facing Malcolm Marshall.
Yeah, well, I was just trying to get out of the way of the ball. It was unfortunate that the thunderstorm came when it did. It would have been a very good team win, but obviously from a personal point of view, it would have been nice. I probably wouldn't have, if I'd managed to bat through, probably would have fallen short of 100, but it would have been nice to seen us win the game. But yeah, Malcolm Marshall again, sadly he's no longer with us, but someone that I got to know in Durban who was playing club cricket in Durban in the winters at Durban High School, DHS. And again, someone I got to know playing club cricket out there through making, playing against him in the county setup. So a wonderful man and a great teacher of the game. And again, in Durban would spend time with me over a beer and lunch, talking about about the game, about my game. So someone who was quite happy to talk to anyone, didn't matter who you played for. We just loved talking about the game, and I think those sort of characters are missed, and he certainly missed. Yeah.
Would he be the fastest, nastiest fasty you ever faced in your career?
Yeah, even though some say he was he was hard to face because he was skiddy.
Yeah.
And he swung it at pace. So when he bowled it short, it didn't, as a sort of fairly tall guy, it didn't get up. Sort of got up to about throat high, was quite awkward. Wasim Akram was not easy either. I found because he had a short run and quick feet through the crease. Again, he swung it, but that short run with the quick feet I found quite hard. Alan Donald was obviously very quick, but in a funny way, he was a little bit easier to face because he had a lovely action, and he was running so far that I knew it was going to be quick, so it didn't sort of catch you by surprise. So I would say those three were challenging. At the back end of my career, Malinga, because of the low arm, was quite difficult. And Shoaib Akhtar, again, knew it was going to be quick, but he was, all arms and legs and ran far. So, but those first three in my first early part of my career thought their skill level and the fact they swung the ball made it, wasn't the fact they were quick, it was the fact they actually did something with the ball. That made it, challenging.
Well, we've just talked about one great West Indian. We have to now focus on another great West Indian, Viv Richards. And for you as a young batter coming into the Glamorgan setup in the early 1990s, to have Viv as the overseas player, Glamorgan so fortunate to have the services of a man who I think Wisden described as one of the greatest players of the 20th century. What did it mean to you, David, then, to have to be changing possibly alongside Viv Richards?
Yeah, again, what wonderful. I mean, you can't sort of. I certainly, watching Test matches on TV at sort of 15, 16, even 17, 18, 19, thinking that in a couple of years' time I'll be sharing the room with Sir Viv. I think, look, the big thing for me was the belief that he had, and that was the big learning that I sort of took from it. He trusted himself and his game. He had this impression that he would go in from ball one and take it on. He didn't. He actually gave himself a chance and he got in. So again, from a young player watching, yes, when he got in, he did try and dominate, but he gave himself a chance. But it was that belief that he had, and it was on his terms rather than be sort of rushed and pushed. And he's very passionate, about playing for Glamorgan, and it meant a lot to him. And again, that was sort of showed for me and those players. I believe that was laid the catalyst for players like Robert Croft, Steve James, Adrian Dale, Tony Cottee that came afterwards. That made that group, I think, good players and strong players because of the influence that he had, which was around pride in who you're playing for and the belief in how you play in your particular game and the manner in which you play. So for me as a young player, it was great learning. He was a bit different, he wouldn't watch every ball. Sometimes he'd be sleeping, you'd have to wake him up. I was 12th man, Viv, you're in. Which again, you think about coaching, and he was like that because he wanted to go out with a clean image. He didn't want to see what was happening and going on. I was different. I wanted to see who was bowling, who was fielding where, was the ball swinging or moving. I didn't want to miss anything. Well, there's another type of player who had a different approach, and that was he wanted to go out with a clean sheet, and because he hadn't seen anything and work it out when he got out there. So again, think about coaching now, the job that I'm doing now, understanding that we're all different, we all go about things differently. So it was good to experience that firsthand from someone who was at one particular time the best batter in the world.
Yeah, have you got any specific memories of 1993 and the Sunday League title, and any specific memories of that wonderful day, the 19th of September?
I have. I remember the day being the experience itself throughout the whole year. I think I played 6 or 7 games, maybe 8 games, but I was fortunate that I was taken everywhere as 12th man. So again, I was experiencing all those wins and seeing those wins. I think what stood out for me was the clear plan that the team had. So the roles that people were playing and the clear. What I think, looking back, was the clear plans that individuals had. Again, if you look at the team, it wasn't full of, obviously Viv Richards was the outstanding player. We had some really good solid county players, but there was, Hugh was obviously earmarked to be an England player. What he was saying, so was Matt. Matt had actually played a little bit for England at the time. But those 3 else was was learning the game, if you like. They were at the start of their careers, but they kept things very simple and straightforward. Look at them. We look at the bowling: Watty, Rolev, Stephen Barwick, Adrian Dale, and Robert Croft. Those were the 5 bowlers that we used. I think what helped us was you could bowl 6-3. So Robert Croft and Stephen Barwick could bowl to 6-3 leg side fields. I also remember our fielding generally being of a high standard, supported by that would stand up the stumps, obviously, to those two, also stand up to Roland Lefebvre and Adrian Dale. So again, sort of controlled length, if you like. And the other thing was, I think Roland Lefebvre, not just with the new, but his death bowling was exceptional. You know, he was bowling Yorkers at the time, which people didn't lap. They didn't sort of stay deep in their crease. They played it differently to how they do now. But I thought the skills that people had and the way they execute was really well. And the batting game was just about running. It was playing your options, but running really well. So it was, for me, from sort of, you know, my job was ultimately 12th man most of the time. But watching it, those are the sort of things that I picked up and learned from how that particular group of players went about it. And once we got on a roll, it was that belief every Sunday that we could do it. And funny enough, so gone on a bit here, but funny enough, that the knock-on effect actually went into the 4-day game as well. Because up until, the Monday morning on that last day, I think we could have finished second to that game down in Kent. But both played off each other. And gave us confidence, obviously, in 4-day cricket. So we scored quickly in 4-day cricket, but we were really disciplined with the ball. So the opposition didn't go ahead from us with the ball, but we scored quickly. So that was certainly a very memorable season.
And any specific memories of that Canterbury evening? Or
the evening was great. I remember that I wasn't playing, but I was actually, I personally felt quite nervous, mainly, probably because of the amount of people that seemed to be in the ground and the amount of Glamorgan supporters that were down there, which was incredible. Obviously, the night was fantastic. I think we were in the bat and ball till well after 2, and it was just full of Welsh people, apart from those that owned the pub that were English. I think they were Welsh by the time we finished, but that was just, as a young player, it was great to experience the, not just winning it, but the celebrations afterwards and what that entailed and what it meant to the supporters, which I also think is important.
Yeah, I've got wonderful memories of being allowed up into the changing rooms, and I've got a wonderful memory of Viv Richards sobbing his heart out on my shoulder. Our very good friend, a mutual friend of ours, Fred Raffle. Of course, yes. Many people on the call will know that Fred is blind, and he had a wonderful guide dog called Ivor, I-V-O-R, not I-V-A-R, the initials of Sir Viv. But I can remember taking Fred over just to say thank you to Viv, and Viv just crying, and it was the emotion, and it was just the outpouring of sheer delight in having done it. And of course, in his career, Hempy, Viv never wore a helmet.
No, he didn't. And there was a couple of times where, he was, I think he was 40 then at that stage. So he was obviously doing well to be playing at that stage. Obviously he was very fit, but he did nearly get hit a couple of times. But yeah, fantastic to watch, to play with, and see someone who was obviously an exceptional player.
So the following year, 1994, as we saw on the slideshow earlier on, you were presented with your Glamorgan cap. What did it mean to you to receive your Glamorgan cap?
Yeah, it meant the world. Why? Because I just had aspirations to play for Glamorgan. As a young player, as soon as I got into that sort of, from the age of 13, 14, 15, playing at Welsh schools initially to start with, but then at 16, making your debut, all you want to do is play for Glamorgan, play for the main team. I used to go and watch second 11 cricket, and Certainly thinking, you know, how do these blokes manage to see the ball because of the pace that obviously as a youngster when you're watching that you can't sort of fathom. But that was all I hoped to do was to play and then to be awarded for performances, and I guess constant performances. That's why you get your cap, because you've stacked up some decent performances. Was the pinnacle. I didn't look much further than that. I just think for me it was about playing for Glamorgan. I'm not necessarily thought about too much about going further. And so I was fortunate to get that at the age of 24 in 94.
Yeah, and the summer of 94, as I alluded to earlier, also a wonderful one for you, because your maiden first class 100 against Warwickshire at Edgbaston.
Yeah, again, I wasn't. I've been sort of in and out the side, playing sort of 92, 93. I played a reasonable amount in sort of longer form, but one day been in and out. And even at Edgbaston, I wasn't sure whether I was going to play when we got there. But got the nod. It was obviously Brian Lara's debut for Warwickshire. Hugh won the toss and decided to bat, and finished the day on 100 not out. Flicked 100 off my leg string with wicket. It was in the air, so it was catchable, but fortunately it didn't go to hand. But yeah, personally a wonderful day and something I'll always cherish.
Well, your name clearly after 93 and again in 94, your name clearly was in the notebooks of the England selectors, because towards the end of that season you had the invitation to go on the England A tour. Now, for someone who a few minutes ago admitted that they weren't great at playing the sweep shot or playing against spinners, going to India and Bangladesh, that must have been not just a social challenge, but also a challenge for you as a young player, now being looked at by the England selectors and playing against some of the great emerging talent in the subcontinent.
Yeah, to get obviously rewarded with a tour to India and Bangladesh tagged on the back end was obviously thrilling. It was daunting for me because I wasn't a particularly good player of spin, and I remember getting up to Loughborough in October time, meeting up with the squad, and we were training on black rubber mats, and the spin bowlers were bowling on these mats, and they obviously were spinning and bouncing. So Ian Salisbury was on that trip, Min Patel, Richard Stemp, and Paul Weeks. So those were the four spinners that travelled. And then we had Peter Such came along and bowled. I'm trying to think who else came along and bowled. We had a couple of other bowlers that came, and literally I was facing the spinners and couldn't get bat on ball. And I was, it was embarrassing. I was thinking, there's no way, I should be actually going on. They should never have selected me to go on this trip. This is going to be a nightmare. But anyway, we kept going up there for, it must have been 5 or 6 weeks before we got there. So slowly got better and better and found a way of scoring. I wasn't that confident, but I sort of started to get better and sort of figure out and formulate plans against off spinners and left armers as well. I should create a room so I could free my arms or get across my stumps, stand deep in my stump, back on my stumps, just sit deep. So started to come up with some plans, and then actually the tour, I got done early on quite a bit with some indifferent LBW decisions. So I spent a lot of time in the nets with John Embry. So John Embry was there. So I was fortunate that I actually got out quite early in the first sort of couple of weeks. And John would take me over to the nets, and he would bowl to me or throw me off spin. And I actually just learned how to sweep him, use my feet to him. And I found that was a big, that 2 weeks, the first couple of weeks where I'd missed out on three games. So I was fortunate to be able to spend a couple of hours most days with him. Helped me to improve. And by the back end, I certainly came back from that tour a lot more comfortable against spin bowling. And certainly had better plans. But It was a really good side. The Indian side was also very good. So again, it was Sourav Ganguly, Rahul Dravid, Mowbray, Rator, Chowan, Ankola, Previn Omre. So they had 6 or 7 that had played, certainly a team, and 6 or 7 that went on to play within a year, play for their test team. So it was a really good challenge. Our side was also very good, and we won both series, the test series and the one-day series. So it was a very good tour.
Yeah, and in the England A party, the likes of Michael Vaughan, Mark Ramprakash, Nick Knight, Dominic Cork. So you had as well as learning in the nets, you had some other fine players around to help hone your game.
Yeah, it was a very good group. I think from that touring part, Mark Elliott was on it, Richard Johnson, Richard Stemp I've mentioned, Bin Patel played for England well, played for England, Salisbury, Jason Gallion, so Glenn Chappell, so it was Keith Piper, Paul Nixon. So it was a good side, and so majority of those actually went on to play, make their full debut for the England side, whether in Test or one-day cricket. So it was certainly a great tour to go on.
Well, the fruits of your labours over the winter months were very evident as you came back then for Glamorgan, and in 1995 at Abergavenny, 157 against Gloucestershire. I'm going to ask you, well, A, have you got any memories of that particular innings? But I mentioned Abergavenny. I just wondered what your favourite grounds in the UK were, and whether Abergavenny was fairly high up. I know that a few of us with slightly more rotund waistlines always used to enjoy going to Abergavenny because it was a very good feed. But from your point of view, Hempy, 157 against Gloucestershire at Abergavenny. So any memories of that innings, and what about your favourite ground?
Not really particularly about that innings. I think the thing I would say about Abergavenny, I think everyone if you're a batter, you like playing there. Smallish boundary, especially straight, very flat wicket, and it only got above sort of waist high, so you weren't sort of ducking and diving. So great ground, great hospitality, very good teas, as you mentioned,
and lunches.
And lunches, yeah. But just a beautiful place to play. Very well supported, so the crowds were also good. But from a batting point of view, it was a very good wicket.
And I think Andrew Simons enjoyed himself there as well with all his sixes.
Yeah, 16 sixes, if I remember correctly. I only think in fairness, he only hit one, I think the short end. And that would have been 6 anyway because it was so big. But all the others he hit to the other side. So yeah, it was good memories from Abergavenny because of the place it was. In terms of favourite grounds, I think anyone will. Well, say anyone. Most people will allude to Lords or the Oval. Well, certainly those two are my sort of favourites. But any of those Test grounds are very nice. And I do have a favourite one in Bermuda called Bailey's Bay Cricket Club, which is pretty much right on the beach, which is again from a physical point of view is very nice to play at. Yeah.
Well, from grounds with happy memories for you, let's talk now about a ground with a less happy memory. And I'm talking here of Fenners, Cambridge in 1996. It looked on paper to be a fairly run-of-the-mill Benson and Hedges 55 over game, Glamorgan against the combined universities, but being staged at Cambridge at the Fenners ground. And unfortunately for you, David, there was an unfortunate accident when Glamorgan were fielding.
Yeah, look, it's one of those things. I mean, that happens. Obviously, collided with Hugh and came up worse. But yeah, that's the game. We both had our eyes on the ball, and yeah, that's part and parcel of sometimes of the game. Doesn't normally happen in cricket in terms of bad collisions like that. I think they're pretty seldom, but in my case it was pretty bad. But fortunately, no lasting problems. So just meant 3 months on the sidelines.
And 3 months on the sidelines, and also thinking about your future. And the following year, you joined Warwickshire.
Yeah, it was. I guess when you sit and look, I before that season, I felt my game had stood still. I think I'd had a good couple of years and then sort of stagnated. I wasn't getting any better. Or I felt I wasn't getting better. It was when Warwickshire had spoken to me, the opportunity to go and play at a test venue with a side that had a lot of success in that early to mid 90s. I just felt it was the right decision for me to make, and the opportunity that I couldn't turn down. It was the hardest decision I've had to make in terms of playing and where I was going to play. Because as I said, mentioned earlier, playing for Glamorgan was all I wanted to do, and I had for me, playing for Glamorgan was playing for Wales. So to have sticks and go and play in a new changing room and have to start again was challenging, but I just felt something that I needed to do in terms of my game, because I had a taste of England A. And I wanted to try and get that back, and I felt that I needed to move to get that back, just from my own personal point of view.
And you also, whilst you were with Warwickshire, you also had a short spell in South Africa, playing for the Orange Free State.
Yeah, so that I was coaching there. The Andy Moles was actually coaching the B team over what they call the B team, so their second team, and he couldn't make that winter, and I'd completed my level 3 at the time, which was the highest sort of coaching badge you could do. And he said, "Look, would you be interested to go and coach?" So I went there to coach, look after the B team and the academy under 19s, just for the 6 months. But when I got out there, they'd had 3 or 4 injuries to the batting group. So I ended up playing the first three one-day games, which again was a great experience, because they play a very aggressive brand of cricket over in South Africa. They train in an aggressive way, so it's new balls and you're ducking every other ball. So it was in your face sort of training, which you didn't have. We certainly didn't experience in county cricket. So again, that was a good learning opportunity, not just from a playing point of view, but also from a coaching point of view. And anyone's been to South Africa, the Orange Free State is a little bit different, and Bloem at the time was quite quiet. But again, those players had a great intensity around the game and a great passion for their state, and again, something that I took on board from a learning point of view, and had made some good friendships there. Obviously, Alan Donald was there anyway, even Hansie Cronje, and I remember him coming back from a tour to New Zealand. He'd only been back 2 days, and we had a second 11 training session, and he came and he asked to train with us. He didn't say I'm training. He actually asked, would you mind if I come and train with you? So we actually trained with the second 11. And a week later, he came and did a running session with their under 19 academy. And again, he said, would you mind if I join you? It's the captain of South Africa. So they were very passionate. And again, that was, for me, opened my eyes to how different cultures do it, different teams do it, from different places around the world.
Yeah. And as I said earlier, all part, life's journey, yeah. all part of experiences and opportunities. Well, you returned to Glamorgan in 2002, and you were able to experience then, for the next few years, an absolute purple patch of form. We talked about the 1993 Sunday League title, but by your own admission, you were a bit part. You weren't necessarily one of the leading lights. But now, 2002, returning to Glamorgan, you're now an established performer with the bat. Although I know you did have a couple of occasions with right arm seam that were quite useful, but you came back very...
17 first class wickets, Jorger.
I know, and 3 for 21, and was it a treble wicket maiden against Hampshire?
I forgot about that, actually. Yeah, it was. Yeah, Hampshire.
Yeah, and I think that because was it Andrew Davis was injured, or
yeah, there was Crofty had messed up I had to bowl the last over because he'd messed up the numbers. He got his maths wrong.
Oh, and a treble wicket maiden.
I'm good at maths. And unfortunately, treble wicket maiden. Could you believe it? You couldn't write that.
Yeah, I know. But as I said, your role now in the team, returning in 2002 as a senior batter, and for the next couple of years, as I said, some great moments. And Glamorgan were very lucky during that period. We'll talk about your own memories of those 2 years and your innings at Canterbury. But I just wanted you've mentioned some of the great names, some of the great overseas players there, both at Glamorgan and at Warwickshire. But Glamorgan were very lucky to have an outstanding Australian seam bowler in Michael Kasprowicz and an outstanding Australian batsman in Matthew Elliott. I know they both brought their own different qualities to the team at the time, but have you got any specific memories of Kasper and Herb?
Oh yeah, that they were. I think the group of players was established at the time and very confident around what you call now white ball cricket, so one-day cricket. And that was the first thing when I came back. I certainly straight away recognised there was a confidence around one-day cricket. Not so much four-day. Funny enough, I felt that it was a different sort of mindset towards that, but certainly white ball cricket and those two particular players were instrumental, I think, in the success that we had. Different characters, Kasper's a little more outgoing, Herb's quite reserved and a bit shy, but both in their way stamped their authority in the change room and within players. They'd have honest conversations with players if they felt they weren't doing the right thing. They'd speak up when they needed to. So the traits that you'd expect from, or you'd hope for in an overseas player. But their on-field performances, they weren't just there for on-field and that was it. They took pride in what they could deliver off-field as well. So we were fortunate to have the all-round package with those two. But I think the big thing for me was there was a confidence around one-day cricket. I felt that as soon as I walked back in the changing room. I didn't feel it in four-day cricket. I don't know why. I think that was just maybe the side hadn't had that success, but in one-day cricket, it was everybody was very confident in terms of what they needed to do, how they're going to go about it, and that showed that obviously in the way we played, because we weren't afraid of anybody. We weren't afraid of defending low totals, chasing high scores. It was a really enjoyable time to play.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier on about the bowling unit in 1993. Let's not forget the bowling unit in the early noughties with Andrew Davis, diver. We had Owen Parkin, two people who were probably very, very, very much white ball specialists, and the spin twins of Croft and Costa to strangle, like you were saying earlier on with Rowley. Although I know Rowley was bowling in the death, but in the middle of the innings, you had the spin twins.
Yeah, we did. We had those two. Obviously, Crofty is an excellent, a wonderful bowler, a wonderful record for Glamorgan. And Dean bowled really well in one-day cricket, where he varied his pace. Again, being left arm, different angle. But I think that the paces that he bowled and the way he varied his pace was really good. And we were fortunate. We also had Alex Wharf, Adrian Dale, and then plus the overseas. So we had a good mix of bowlers. and we had good reserve bowlers if we had any niggles with some of those. So we seemed to have that depth, and the batting unit stayed the same pretty much most of the time. So again, it was that consistency allowed us to, I think, gain confidence in each other and know how each other plays and find our way and our method of playing, which was successful.
Yeah, and someone else who played a big role that year in the batting unit, Michael Powell as well, and going down to Canterbury for that game against Kent. Again, a bit like back in 1993, winner takes all. Kent, who had quite a tidy team. I think it was Matthew Fleming was the captain. He was finishing at the end of the season. I think they'd organised I seem to think, because they're sponsored by Spitfire Brewery, I seem to remember that there was a fly past or something before. But what are your own particular memories of that day and your own match-winning innings?
Oh, again, a special day because obviously because we won it. But I think again it was obviously a big day because of the potential outcome. But I think it was a really good performance. Again, team performance. I think that's what stood out for me was when someone didn't come off or didn't play particularly well on a given day, someone else got the job done. And I think, yes, there might have been one or two that were consistent, but generally there were people, we dovetailed really well. And I think, again, on that occasion, there was a couple of innings that were, the 20 or 30s at key moments, but made it in quick speed that sort of flipped the momentum of the game, or spells here and there, or fielding bits here and there. It was just, and that happened all year. And it was just one of those things that again, I go back to the confidence and that self-belief. It was, I don't know how you describe it. For me, it was just, you don't get it often. I haven't felt that, often in teams. I felt it at Warwickshire '97, definitely. When I walked into that changing room, there was that belief. And I certainly felt it when I went back to Glamorgan for those couple of years. Every year it came in. And then, like anything, your personnel change, players retire. You got young players coming through. You don't have the same overseas players, so obviously that has an impact. But there was those sort of 3 or 4 years across those two teams where at the start of the year you just felt that this could be special because of the confidence that people seemed to have and the way they were training. It wasn't just the way they were playing; it was also the way they were training, the way they were talking about the game. People seemed to be really aligned with the goals that we wanted to achieve, and things we wanted to achieve, which again is important.
Yeah, and we mustn't forget, you were saying about young players coming in and quickly settling in. Mark Wallace was now behind the stumps. I think Matt Maynard the year before had been keeping in some of the one-day games, but Wally came in and there was a crucial run out, I seem to remember, during that game. I think it was Adrian Dale down on the third man boundary winging it in, and I was in a conversation a few days ago about what was the greatest run out in Glamorgan's history. Was it Ozzie Wheatley in 1969 at Swansea throwing it into Ivan Jones, or was it Adrian Dale winging it into Mark Wallace? I'm not going to say one was better than the other. They were both very, very fine pieces of fielding. But there was another great occasion in that year, because as part of their warm-up for the one-day series, England decided to play Wales at Cardiff, the first of 3 games. We won't talk about the result in the second. We won't talk about the result in the third. We'll talk instead about the result in the first one.
The last two aren't important. It's more around the first one.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that was again a really good experience. Obviously, with the Duncan Fletcher connection, he was coaching England at the time, so I imagine that had something to do with it. But we were a good one-day side, and I know we roped in Jack Callis to play and Kasprowicz, so we had a couple of
They're Welsh. They're Welsh.
Yeah, I think there's a Welsh stamp somewhere on their passports. But look, it was again a great experience, and again it's a pity that didn't carry on playing as Wales under the umbrella of Glamorgan. But yeah, a good day, and again full house, which was important, and good prep for them. I think that was the other thing. It wasn't just one-way traffic. We obviously won the first one. We came second in the other two, but I certainly know that they felt it was a worthwhile exercise.
And moving now on to 2004, we'll talk about T20 finals in a minute, but let's just focus on the white ball, on the one-day league. I think it's in the record books that no county had won the one-day title so early as August the 17th, which was when Glamorgan were playing Lancashire up at Swansea in Colwyn Bay. No Sky cameras there, of course. BBC Radio Wales were there with the aforementioned Mr. Bevan, Mr. Shepherd. But how great was it for you, David, to actually win something on Welsh soil? We've spoken about winning the Sunday League at Canterbury, winning the Sunday League again in 2002 in Canterbury, but now back home, North Wales. I know it's 5.5 hours drive away from Swansea, but what did it mean to you to actually clinch some silverware in front of your home supporters on Welsh soil?
Yeah, again, I won't accept those in North Wales, but it would have been great if it could have been in Swansea. But yeah, it was. Yeah, it goes without saying. It was great to win it at home, to be able to celebrate it with Welsh people, the majority of Welsh people being at home. But like anything, it's. I think what was hard with that occasion was that we ended up winning it slightly earlier than what people were thinking. I think everyone thought it would go down to the wire again, to that last game. To win it so early was great. Mick Lewis was playing, the Australian was playing, and obviously I've worked with Mick at Cricket Victoria for the last 6 years. So he often mentions that and often talks about it, and talks again about the night in the clubhouse before we went back to the hotel, where we stayed in our playing gear, and we sat in that tiny that old hotel. No disrespect for the hotel, but it was pretty old. And that tiny little bar where it pretty much just get 20 people in. So it was a really good evening just for the players. So it was a bit different to the evening we had down in Canterbury. But it was a really nice evening just to spend with the playing group for that couple of hours.
Yeah, and it would be very, very, very remiss if we didn't mention that, of course, Glamorgan's coach at the time, we mentioned earlier on a great coach in Duncan Fletcher, but I think an equally great Glamorgan coach, sadly no longer with us, John Derrick. What are your memories of John? What have you taken into your new role from John?
John, his manner. So his manner and his calmness around the changing room. So you don't see him, or didn't see him kicking cups of water over or throwing bottles or abusing anybody. He was very calm, very controlled. He's a lovely man. Had a lovely personality about him anyway. But his manner around the changing room was excellent. He had a care for people. And it was very authentic with that care, so it wasn't put on, it was genuine. And that was evident for me from a lot younger, when I was 17, 18, doing indoor nets in Neath. We'd always spend time with you and talk to the younger players. So he was very empathetic as a person, but he had a genuine care for people, and a care for young players. And I think that was again evident. And the relationship evident in when he was coaching the main team. And I think the relationships he had with those players, you mentioned Michael Powell, Mark Wallace, David Harrison, who he coached in the second 11 that had come through the system with him, and then he obviously moved into the first team coaching role. So that was obvious for me coming, obviously knowing JD, but then coming back from the outside, coming back in, those relationships that he had. But as a person, yeah, he was a wonderful person, and it's obviously tragic, his passing, and he certainly is sorely missed. Yeah.
And in paying tribute to John, we mustn't forget, of course, 2004 T20 finals day, Glamorgan losing there against the Leicestershire Foxes at Edgbaston, not one of our greatest ever days in T20 cricket. So let's talk about the quarter-final at Sophia Gardens, Glamorgan against Warwickshire Bears. I think at one stage, if I remember rightly, Glamorgan was something like 8 for 2 when Messrs Hemp and Elliott joined forces with about 170 odd to get. Have you got any special memories of your partnership with Herb?
Look, the occasion was. I remember the occasion. It was very noisy. I found that the noise level was quite high. So being a T20, I think the crowds tended to be a little bit more vocal. Again, it was obviously a very good crowd, but I certainly remember the atmosphere was bouncing, if you like. I certainly felt that. Yeah, we were 2 down early. I do remember. I think Neil Carter got a couple of early wickets. He was bowling, reasonably well. I do remember one thing from the game was Mark Walk was bowling for them, who had a suspect action, and the wicket was spinning, and I was trying to get in leg side. And I do remember Herb came down halfway through. I tried 2 on the bounce, and Herb came down and said, "Look, why don't you hit with the spin?" And that was a change for me. Actually, that conversation made me play in a different area. I think that was a catalyst for me, being able then to get a couple of boundaries away, and then pick up my own personal innings, which helped us. Didn't quite get us over the line, but helped us get close. And unfortunately, we got over the line towards the back end of the game, but a really good occasion. But you mentioned, I will mention the finals day. That was really disappointing because we certainly should have chased down. I think it was 147. That total from Leicester. I think it was 147, but was it 164? Anyway, we might have got one, but we certainly should have chased it down. I felt that we certainly had a side to beat them. The other 2 teams, Surrey and Lancs, were very strong on paper, so that would have been a difficult challenge. But the semi-final was a disappointing loss. I certainly think we were good enough to win that.
Well, let's move on to the year 2006, because changing captain, Crofty finished, and you took over and led Glamorgan then for the next 2 seasons. What do you think you brought to your role as captain for Glamorgan? What was the Hemp way?
I guess for me it wasn't about me. It was about the players. It was about empowering them. I like people to be involved in decisions. So it wasn't about me saying, "Well, this is how we're going to do it. This is how we need to go about it." It was, I had my thoughts on it, but I wanted people to join in with that. It was about us as a group, as a group of players. It wasn't the David Hemp show. It was the Glamorgan First 11 show, and whoever was playing has a part to play and has a voice. And so for me, it was about, like, I was, I had good relationship with I'd like to think with every them. I think that helps as well, because if you do have that relationship with players, then you know that when you give them good news or bad news, they're going to take it in the right way, and you know that you've got their best interest at heart. So for me, it was just about being as much of a people person as I could. It was something that I'd never sort of had ambitions to do. I'd obviously captained the 19s and the second 11 and enjoyed captaining teams, but it wasn't a burning ambition. But when it came along, it was a great honour and a privilege, and it was very humbling to get that opportunity, and loved it. It was a challenging time because we were transitioning, and we were, the playing stuff. We were losing players, losing some senior players. Invested in youth, which was fine. We obviously invested in the ground as well, which meant that the money was limited in terms of bringing players in. So it was challenging from that point of view. But again, as an experience, it was wonderful, and I wouldn't change that. And it was a great honour. So it's a really good memories.
Yeah, and I as a young scorer, or younger scorer, I know working with you, behind the scenes, doing all the little bits of paperwork that have to be done. I knew that you were always the same, never any mood swings. I'm not going to name other captains, but you were always the Hempy that I'd known as a young whippersnapper from the early 1990s, and it was great to see you mature, and, as I say, step into the shoes of others under who you had learnt, and for you to lead the side with great grace, and also carry on, of course, still scoring runs and elegantly. And there was a big score, I know, down at Kent against Canterbury, but your role as a senior batter, and also now as the captain. But there was another dimension of your life which was starting around about that time, which was playing for Bermuda in the ICC competition. So obviously we spoke about your mum and dad being out there and you spending your first 5 years there. But how did it come about that you then started to play in the ICC competitions for Bermuda?
Yeah, well, the short is Bermuda qualified in Ireland in 2005 for the 2007 World Cup. So it was a qualifying tournament in Ireland, and Bermuda qualified. And the chief executive had an ICC meeting in London a week after the qualification, and contact was made. And I went down to Lords to meet him, had a conversation. They obviously knew I had a passport. I'd actually seen minutes to a meeting in '92 when was playing for Glamorgan, when the Bermuda Cricket Board had mentioned my name and said, "Look, can we get him across to play?" It didn't come to any sort of fruition at that time. So they'd obviously thought about it, but now they'd actually qualified for a World Cup. They just felt they needed someone who'd had a little bit more playing experience. So it was really interesting because initially it was, you can come and join us in March, and that'll be great. And I initially said no, I'm not interested. I'm not flying into the Caribbean in March and seeing the players for 2-3 weeks and playing in the tournament in April. If you're serious about it, then I want to start now. I want to get to know the playing group now. And I want to try and add some value now, not sort of fly in and then disappear. So that's where it began. So I actually spent that winter working for the Cricket Board, spent 100 days, even though it was winter, it wasn't that painful in Bermuda, but it was great to spend 3 months getting to know people. I didn't debut until the following November because Bermuda didn't have any cricket until then. So I actually debuted in 2006 in November in Kenya. But it was a great year where I was visiting the island on and off for a period and getting to know people, not just off the field, but the players, more importantly, and Gus Logie, because Gus Logie was the coach. So started to formulate a really good relationship with Gus that I still have now at this stage.
And I'm guessing your youngsters and your wife were able to enjoy the island in the same way that your mum and dad had with you and your younger brother Tim.
Yeah, yes and no. They did visit. They didn't come for a significant length of time, but they did sort of come for 2 week sort of blocks. So I think they had about three 2 week blocks where they came across. But so yeah, I was away from the family for quite a bit of time for that next 6 or 7 years, really,
Yeah.
the winter months. But again, I wouldn't change it. It was a great experience.
Well, a really, really good quiz question that has done the rounds during lockdown. I don't know, we were talking earlier before we started about the lockdown in Melbourne. I know it's been fairly lengthy, but there have been various quizzes on the Glamorgan website and elsewhere. And there's one that I would love to, well, I'm going to share it with you, and it's which Glamorgan batsman scored a half century against India in the 2007 World Cup. All sorts of answers there, ranging from Matthew Elliott to Herschel Gibbs. But of course, it's David Lloyd Hemp. What are your memories of that? And where did you score the 50?
So it was Trinidad and Tobago. Glamorgan actually played there on a pre-season tour back in '92. Or was it '91? Either '91 or '92. So I knew the ground. Yeah, look, personally, it was a good day out, obviously. But yeah, it was a very good wicket, and didn't do a great deal in terms of the ball, and but a wonderful occasion for me personally, but also for Bermuda. I mean, the whole World Cup was great for us in terms of exposure at that level, the opportunity to play. I mean, realistically, we weren't gonna cause too many problems, certainly to India and Sri Lanka. Bangladesh was a team that we felt we could probably upset if things sort of fell our way. And as it happened, that was a rain-affected game, and we did have quite a good opportunity. We just missed out on a few key moments. We didn't take our chances, and they ended up getting away from us. But look, overall, wonderful experience to play in a World Cup, to see the best of the best, but just to experience the whole atmosphere around it, especially in the Caribbean, because of the atmosphere that the Caribbean has anyway for cricket. But a World Cup in the Caribbean just made it slightly better.
Yeah, my wife and I, for the last 3 out of the last 4 winters, we've been lucky enough to visit either Antigua or St. Lucia, and I know when we went there back in January, we arrive at the airport. The taxi driver, obviously never seen the guy before from Adam. You get in the car and he says, "Oh, where are you from? What do you do for a job?" And I said, "Well, I work for a cricket team." "Oh, cricket man." And then the journey from the south of St. Lucia to the north, where we were staying, sort of 40 minutes. I barely got a word in, and he was just talking about the great, Darren, Sammy, and as we went through the island, there's a little place called Miku where Darren was born, and he was just telling us about how much it meant. And I'm guessing the same in Bermuda, because Hempy, how many of the Bermudan players were actually professionals at the time?
One.
Right.
Me, yeah, that was it. And look, the other thing about Bermuda was all the players, apart from one, so a bowler called Sally Muckadam, who was born in Cape Town, but he'd been working in Bermuda for 7 or 8 years. So he was the only foreigner, if you like. Everyone else was born on the island.
Yeah.
So which you don't often find in associate countries. Kenya, all the players generally born there. But if you look around all the other countries that were playing, especially associate countries, they've normally got a lot more imports that play. So we were lucky that we had the core group was. And it meant more to the Bermuda public, because obviously they were all born
and I guess there's a synergy there with the Glamorgan team in 1993, where it's predominantly local boys all doing well and shared experiences and ideal role model as a overseas pro, which I guess comparing you with Viv Richards. But you carried on playing for Bermuda. Your Glamorgan career came to an end at end of 2008, and I think I'm right in saying that you then played in the Birmingham League during the English summer, but then in the winter carried on playing for Bermuda. So just talk us through, before we do that, then the end of your career at with Glamorgan. I think if I'm right, your final innings was against Warwickshire at Edgbaston in a drawn game. I think Adam Chantry caused a bit of wreckage with the ball, but at the end the game was drawn, and a new door opened.
Yeah, it was like anything, things come to an end. It was disappointing to finish, obviously, because Glamorgan had been my life for a large amount of time, and I enjoyed what I was doing. I loved the players that I was playing with, but like you say, like anything comes to an end. It was at Warwickshire. It was 44, I think. Boyd Rankin got me out, caught second slip, bounced a bit on me. But wonderful memories across the county playing career. But I was lucky that in the background, Solihull School had approached me and offered me a full-time role as director of cricket, which I wasn't. Funny enough, at that time, I still hadn't decided whether or not I was going to take it, and I sort of sat on it for a couple of weeks, and then decided to take up that opportunity because it allowed me to carry on playing for Bermuda as well. So it was a win for me. It was a chance to develop develop my coaching, see if it was something that I was going to be enjoy, but also be any good at, but also allow me to continue playing for a couple of years with Bermuda, which I wanted to do.
And your role at Solihull School, did you have to do any formal teaching, or was it just purely cricket?
Thankfully, no teaching. It was. My experience there was great. I mean, after a couple of years, I transitioned into a head of games role, so I had a lot more accountability and responsibility across all of sport, which again, brought me into robust conversations with heads of department and parents, which was delightful. So, but again, really good learning, and I've still got keep in contact with people there, pupils there as well, but also staff there. So I had a really enjoyable time there before we decided to emigrate to Australia. Yeah.
So what you're saying there is your man skills then were honed in the at Solihull School, and then also playing for Bermuda. So opportunities then arose in Australia for you.
We decided we started to emigrate, and I've been there a year. I'd managed to pick up three cricketing roles, so they were part-time. One was director of coaching at a private school at Scots College, which is one of the better known schools in Melbourne. I'd actually played there for Welsh schools in 1987 on a tour of 86 on a tour of 87 on a tour of Australia. So that was again nice fond memories. I was working with Cricket Australia, looking after the intellectual disability team, and then also working for one of the Premier League clubs, Pran, as assistant coach. So I was doing 3 bits and pieces coaching roles, and my time was split across 3 evenly. And then a year into being in Australia, the state women's job came up, which was linked to the women's Styles Big Bash job. So I was fortunate enough to get that opportunity. And
how different? I mean, I read a lot. I see a lot of the Big Bash. How different is the Big Bash to the Vitality Blast T20 in this country?
I think from obviously from a male perspective, the crowds, the crowds are 20,000+ regularly. I mean, the Melbourne Derby, Renegades and Stars was 82,000. So yeah, so it's the big atmospheres, they're big games, they're all day-night games because obviously it gets dark early there. So they make it an occasion. They obviously play at all the test venues, and again they're pretty much sold out. So it's changing a bit now. They've gone to 14 games rather than 10. So some of the games aren't completely sold out. The MCG obviously doesn't sell out when the Stars play there, but they sell out 40 or 50,000. So it's still a good atmosphere.
Yeah. So
Pardon?
The local derbies are a little bit like Cardiff and Swansea at football, then.
But, yeah, you don't see the shenanigans, but there's banter, but you don't see too many arrested.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the Sydney one, the Sydney Thunder and Sydney Sixers, they go through the same thing. So, but the Big Bash is it's an incredible tournament. I haven't worked in the IPL or seen that, so I know that when that's played in India in front of people, that's another great experience for those that are involved. But the Big Bash, even though I didn't have a lot to do with the men, I was there on occasion. But even from the women's point of view, because we used to play before the men most of the time, so you're still a part of it. But it's a great competition and a great concept that Cricket Australia have, and brand that they've produced.
I'm really looking forward to the coming summer when the new brand kicks off in the UK with the 100. Again, city-based franchises with the best men, the best women from all over the world, and the Welsh Fire men, Welsh Fire women. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. Have you got any ambitions, maybe, David, in the coming years to further develop or to have time working for 100 franchise?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually got interviewed for one role and didn't get it, but yes, I would. I think only because, well, for lots of reasons. I think it's a different type of game. It's a new game, and look, it's you're always learning, and I think to play with, as you say, it's going to be an exciting competition to be a part of. So if there was an opportunity to work in it, and I was free to, then yeah, it would be a great experience. I think that's what coaching does. It gives you different experiences, and just like the role I'm in now, it's a wonderful learning opportunity. Working in a different culture with different players who play the game in a different way, and the 100 will be exactly the same. There's a bit more strategy involved in that. When do you take that extended over? The fact that it's less balls means there'll be that additional pressure. So it's. And I think the atmospheres will be great. The fact that it's now city based rather than county based will add that little bit more. So from a distance, it'll be good to watch.
Yeah, and I think for me, as someone, as a young boy growing up in Cardiff in the late 1960s, early 1970s, being able to turn on the television, BBC One or BBC Two, or BBC Wales, of course, covering games from Swansea, but every Sunday turning on to see the late and the great Peter Walker introduce cricket, but without having to leave home in, terrestrial TV. Cricket's been missing there, and I think one of the big bonuses is for cricket to be shared with other broadcasting channels when the 100 comes live. I'm guessing, Hempy, that one of the other big changes you would have noticed is that cricket being so central to the Australian psyche. Now I know the climate helps. I know those beautiful beaches. I know the wonderful landscape, but there's just something, talking to all the Australians, there's just something. Cricket means so much to them.
Yeah, I was I arrived in the the 23rd of December in 2013, and obviously that's Christmas time and it's holiday time. And the people, friends that we knew, we get invited because it was holiday time, as I said, to barbecues, lunches, dinners. And I was just absolutely amazed how many people were playing what they call backyard cricket. So everyone was playing, and everyone sort of stopped lunch and went and played cricket for an hour, and then went back and ate again or swam. And it wasn't just boys and dads; it was women, it was girls. And that's first alluded to me to the fact that it is in their culture. And then when you go and watch a test match, and it's not just men that are walking through the gates or boys, it's actually girls and families. You understand how much it is a part of the Australian DNA, if you like. And that was the big standout for me. So it was no surprise then when I started working in the female game, how good the players were, but also how much knowledgeable they were about the game, because they've obviously been brought up on it.
Yeah, and now going to another cricketing hotbed in Pakistan. Obviously, everyone on the call and all your friends and supporters here in South Wales wish you all the very best in your new roles. So can you just explain what your new role entails?
Well, head coach of the women's national side. So overseeing not the whole women's program, but certainly the senior program, and make sure there's alignment through to with us, our emerging group of players, and then the 3 domestic teams. So there's only 45 players that we sort of look at the moment. So there's 27 that I sort of oversee. 18 of those are on contract, so 9 are full-time, 9 are emerging, and then there's another 9 that are that actually had played internationally, but they're sort of in and out the team. So that's the way that it's sort of set up at the moment. They're working on the structure underneath. There are no city-based teams at the moment. So how they operate is girls get invited to trials, and they pick 3 squads of 15, and they play a domestic 50-over competition, a domestic T20 competition. So next week, I'm off to Rawalpindi for the T20 competition. I won't be coaching, I'll just be overseeing. There's 3 teams, as I said. 45 players will be involved, and they'll play each other twice, so over a sort of 3-week period with a final. The games are live streamed in Pakistan, so they're getting exposure, so they're trying to spread as much as they can in terms of the vision that's available. So player numbers are obviously a concern, but the 27 players that I've seen are talented and have ability. And I guess if I look at the big difference is the numbers and the structure that's in place in Australia. But the board is driven to trying to create an environment where players can improve. Their ambition is to be a top 4 ranked team by the end of 2023. So they're given it sort of 3 years to invest, not just in coaching, but also throw money and provide off-field support. So full-time S&C, full-time physio, player development managers, as well as coaches. So they're looking at the whole thing, pretty much what they do in Australia and what they do in England. So the female game is supported well, obviously in Australia and England in particular. Not so well in some of the other countries, but Pakistan is now trying to catch up. Since Wasim Khan's come along, he's been the catalyst for it. A year ago, he sort of said, no, we need to make sure that we're doing the right thing by the female team, and their ambition is to be a top 4 ranked team. So that actually helps me, because obviously there's that expectation. That's when they want to get to, but that's good. That gives me some clear lines, but also gives the players some clear objectives. So no one's under any false pretenses of what we want to achieve and where we want to go, and what we have to do to get there. So So it's really exciting, and say the first 3.5 weeks has been great.
Great. Well, as I said, we all wish you very well, and how wonderful it would be if in the Welsh Fire women's team later on this summer, or maybe next year, there's a young Pakistan lady who will have owed an awful lot of their progress to you. And as I say, we do wish you all the very best. Well, we've got about another 15 minutes or so at our disposal.
Yep.
And we've already had lots of questions come in advance. If I can just say to everyone, as before when we had the Alex Wharf talk, on the bottom of your screen, if you move your mouse, or your mice, I should say, plural, you'll see the chat function. And if there is a question that anyone would like to raise with David, well, now's your chance to do so. But we'll start off with some of the questions which have been sent in advance. I've got a question from a guy called Nick, and I've also got a question from someone called Adam. They're both along the similar lines, and they've both said, bearing in mind your coaching experiences in Australia and your coaching experiences in Pakistan, is there anything that you could then suggest to further improve domestic cricket in the UK?
I think I haven't seen as such yet what they do domestically in Pakistan enough as yet. In Australia, well, what I would say in Australia is their practice, the way they practice, is at very high intensity. And I think the one thing I've taken from that is it's hard in county cricket because obviously you play a lot of days. And at the first class level in Australia, they play less. They're playing more now than they used to. But for me, it's the intensity at which they train. Everything is purposeful. There's an expectation around ownership around your own game and developing your game. But for me, it's the intensity. It feels like a game. So there's it's new balls flying around. They set fields. They're in your face. They're aggressive. They just play it as if it's a game. And that I think does set you apart because you're in a challenge all the time and you're being challenged. So I think that for me would be the big thing. So I would push that from a coaching point of view. That I think there's times where you need to have those. There's also learning practices where you might just be doing throwdowns and you say, well, look, this is a learning phase today, but there needs to be that competitive element. I would suggest, because that for me gets people to learn to be challenged. And once you get used to being under pressure more often, then the game is about pressure in essence, and the players that can deal with pressure the best are the ones that generally come out on top. So I would encourage that as much as possible.
Brilliant. And the question from Adam as well is a supplementary question, and he's made a very, very shrewd observation. He said David's career in county cricket spanned a period before the year 2000 when it was all the counties playing everyone else in the county championship, and then the latter part of your career playing in a two-divisional championship, promotion and relegation. Now, I know there's lots of talk about how the county calendar may appear in the coming months, even in the coming years. But what Adam asks is, of the two, all or the two divisions, which did you prefer and why?
Good question. I did like the two divisions when it was 3 up, 3 down. I didn't like it when they went to 2 up, 2 down. I thought when they had the 3 up, 3 down, where they, I only say that because there was a game I played in the last game of the season where 4 teams could still go up. So I think it was, the competition went right to the end. So So I think that was important. What I liked about I didn't like the 18 in a block, but what I did like when I first started playing in that early 90s, I did like 3-day cricket, because the last day tended to be a glorified one-day chase. So it was you chase 260 in 45, 50 overs. It was a one-day game in essence, and I think that was really good. I think the cricket that was played then was good cricket. I know the advent of 4-day cricket meant that you didn't get chases set up that way, so games would take a natural evolution. But I actually quite liked that, because I think that was really good from a learning point of view. You learned how to chase, you learned how to bat under pressure. Whereas some of those 4-day games, yes, there's obviously pressure with time, but the games didn't really pan out. But if that had been the early 90s, had been that 2 division, I think it would have served a really good purpose. I think that would be the ideal setup or system, because you're playing for promotional relegation generally right until the last game of the season. Whereas there were certainly a lot of dead games. I don't mean dead games in a bad way, but I think players sometimes were handed debuts. I mean, I got handed a debut, if you like, when Ravi Shastri went back to play for India. That's why I played it was the last game of the season down in Hampshire. In essence, if Ravi had still been there, I probably wouldn't have played that year. So in a way, it did afford the opportunity for teams that were at the bottom to sort of play some younger players, but you weren't playing for any, in essence, you weren't playing for championships. Whereas in the 2 divisional system set up, when there's pressure going down to the last game because you can still go up or still get relegated, then you're having really competitive cricket.
Yeah, I guess the new system that's coming in or being trialled this coming summer, where there's going to be 2 groups, an initial block of I think it's 10 games, then there's a rejig, so it's going to be a Super September where there's going to be 3 separate divisions, and so I think there's possibly the best of both worlds coming in. But we like
that sounds really good.
Yeah. Okay, the next question's from someone I think you know called Clive, who asks the question, what was your first cricket bat and how old were you?
First cricket bat, actually, well, first cricket I remember, well, I don't know, the small one I don't know. The first one I officially used in a game would have been his old Grey Nichols, which was about 3 sizes too big. So that would be the one that I first used.
Yeah. When you say his, you're talking about your dad?
Yes.
Sorry. Yes. Who were delighted to see on the call tonight, and other members of the Balconeers as well, who do such sterling work to support Glamorgan. So it was about 2 or 3 sizes too big, your first?
Way too heavy, but at 10, 11 years old, it obviously had a very good middle. So whenever I did miss hit one, it still managed to just clear the infield. So I was, but it was far too heavy.
Okay. A man called Duncan has sent in a question. This is based on your time in playing for Bermuda in the ICC. Who do you, or which do you think might be the next nation to emerge from the ICC into as it were the senior or the Premier League of international nations? He said Afghanistan have moved through, Ireland obviously have moved through. So based on what you've seen, Hempy, who would you say is the next cab off the rank?
I think the USA. I think if they can, it might take a bit of time, but I think when they get their infrastructure in place, because cricket in the States is bigger than what people I think Fink. He's played in New York, Florida, and a little bit in Los Angeles. But the potential market, who they can reach, again, it's all expats, so it's Indians, Sri Lankans, Pakistanis, West Indians that play the game. And having played against the USA, I've seen how they've got better and how they're now importing more players. So I think once they get some resource and funding and set some proper structures up, I think potentially, because of the numbers they have there, it won't be an American, your stereotypical white American coming through. I don't think it'll be, your expat community, but I think that they're the ones I would suggest to be the country that has the best opportunity to come through and develop. The others, I don't know Scotland's ambition. I guess I think if they decide to follow what Ireland do, but again, it becomes a funding issue and having players. What I've seen in the States is they do have some good players coming through. And America, if they get the right sponsorship, there tends to be a lot more money there. But again, they've tried before. I mean, they were going through this 5 or 6 years ago when I was playing with Bermuda. I know there was sort of misappropriation of funds, but if they get their act together, I think they potentially could be one.
Okay, well, maybe in January, when the next president makes his speech, I'll listen out in his inauguration speech to see whether he wants to make America great again on the cricket field. Again, just a reminder that there is still time, if anyone's got any other questions, to send them in using the chat facility. I've got one here from John, who is asking about your time in the South Wales Cricket Association, and his question is a very simple one. Is there a place for overseas players to appear in the local leagues?
Yeah, I think so. I know. I think I mentioned my experience at Swansea with 2 overseas players, and obviously that hindered opportunity. But I think if one team having one, I think that will gain. The quality of that person is important, because you want them to add value both on and off, and help develop players. Obviously, try and win games of cricket, which is important, because that shows leadership in terms of winning, but also helping develop players. And I think, I was lucky to be able to watch those 2 players play. I know that clubs and players that I've seen and talked with that have had played under a good overseas player have said that they wouldn't change it, and they've learned so much from them. So I do think there is place for it. I know the argument is it takes up the place of a younger player, but I'd argue that sometimes there's players that are been in the system a little bit longer, that they need to be made way for some younger players rather than hanging on. So I'd go that way and give a youngster an opportunity that way to make space.
Yeah. And a question coming in from Chris, and he's asking you to answer this from your coaching perspective as opposed to a playing perspective. I can see the reason why. He says, do you think that the end of the Colpack registrations will benefit counties such as Glamorgan as well as the England Test team?
Yeah, I do. I think there was a period where I know that there's some counties have been blessed with some really good Colpacks that have stood up and been really good servants. But for me, there was a stage where there was just too many, and I think the county system was being saturated with too many, and ones that were reasonable players, but I don't think they were standout players. And I think I certainly think some counties missed the opportunity to, again, I go back to developing your own, developing young players and giving those young players an opportunity. So But every county will be at a different cycle in terms of their player list and where it sits, and sometimes you might have to bring in some senior players to help through that 2 or 3 year transition. But I think, you know, and this is what I loved about Glamorgan when I was a young player coming through. It was, we did have some English-based players, and I know that Jack is there. Jack was one of those. So was Colin Metson, so was Alan Butcher, so was Steve Bastian and Darren Foster. So there was a few players that were there. That was great, but we predominantly looked to develop homegrown Welsh players, and I think that's where all counties should be looking first to do, wherever your region is, because I certainly felt that, and maybe the Welsh, Wales, England sort of scenario, but I certainly felt that was a lot more passion and pride playing for Glamorgan, because I felt it was very much united because of where we came from as a group. In terms of the Colpacks, yes, there's been some really good servants that have done, not just performed on the field, but have been brilliant off the field. But I think you just got to be careful how many you look to employ and use, because it is taking up, you know, positions and England players ultimately, or players that can go on to play for England.
Yeah. Well, the final question that's just come in is from Howell, and it's a very appropriate one, bearing in mind the good news for Glamorgan about 3 weeks ago, with confirmation of our signing of Michael Neser, the Australian all-rounder. And I noticed today that he's been included in the I think it's a 17-man test squad for the upcoming series against India. Well, how the final question for tonight, Hempy, is just simply from Howell, saying, what can you share with us about Michael Neser, and how good a bowler will he be, do you think, in English conditions?
Yeah, I think he'd be very good in English conditions. With it, he swings it, so his natural swing of the ball, reasonable pace, but swings the ball. So I think he'll certainly with the Dukes, with the Duke ball, he'll certainly create opportunities. So I think it's a very good signing.
And another adopted Welshman getting runs at the other end. I've been told it is Marnus Labuschagne. I was adopting the South African Labuschagne, but I've been told actually Labuschagne might be easier, not on my tonsils as well, perhaps. But how you've obviously had a chance in the last few years to watch Marnus, and actually Howell has sent in a supplementary question, which we just have enough time to raise. And he says about Marnus, where would you place Marnus in terms of the batting greats? How great a batter could he be?
Oh, if you look at his start to his Test career, I mean, it's been phenomenal, really. I think what's interesting about him, from reading stuff about him, but also having conversations with people about him that know him a little bit more in more detail. He just loves the game, and he's they use the word in Australia nuffy, so he's a bit of a cricket nerd, if you like, so a cricket nuffy. So he loves the game. He's consumed with the game. It's a bit like Steve Smith, and these players that I guess there's a danger that they don't switch off and they become too engrossed. But he certainly got a passion for the game. He wants to get better. He's got a very simple method and the way he goes about it. So I think if he can continue to keep learning and evolving, which obviously he's doing, and he keeps churning runs out. And I think if that's, who knows how good he could be. But at the moment, he's had an incredible start to his international career.
Yeah, I know. I did see a stat. You'd expect nothing else from me, would you, Hempy? No. But I did see a wonderful stat that in terms of all the batsmen who have played Test cricket in their first 20 tests, the only batter who ended up getting a higher average was Don Bradman, 99.96 or whatever, and here's Marnus in the low 70s. So I'm sure all of us here in South Wales and all the Glamorgan supporters elsewhere in the world will be keeping an eye on the Australia-India series. Be wonderful to see Marnus churn out a few runs, and be great to see Michael Neser knock over a few wickets as well and do really well ahead of what we all hope is going to be a wonderful spell with Glamorgan in 2021. Well, 2 hours has just flown by, Hempy. It's been wonderful. The internet connection has held throughout as well. What time is it in Lahore? I should have asked, actually.
It is 1 minute past 2 in the morning.
Oh dear, I do apologise, but it's
been a pleasure, and thank you for the questions, and for me, just thanks for the opportunity. It'd be great to chat with you, and I wish everyone keep safe. I know the UK is going through a bit of a challenging time at the moment with COVID, so keep safe and have a very good Christmas to everybody, and hopefully I'll catch you all at some stage in Glamorgan in the near future.
Brilliant, thanks, Hempy, and I can actually say that now that our next winter talk, further information will be on the Glamorgan website tomorrow. But I'm delighted that Michael Hogan, of course, Glamorgan's beneficiary this year, and fingers crossed next year as well. I'm sure he'll explain what's happening. But Michael Hogan will be joining us at 7 o'clock on December the 10th. That's our next winter talk. And Michael has spoken face to face in the museum before. Absolutely brilliant. But he's since then, 3 years ago, he's taken a few more wickets, 600 first-class wickets for both Western Australia and Glamorgan, and of course talking about how cricket's been during lockdown, and also his aims and his ambitions for the next couple of years. So that, as I say, 7 o'clock on the 10th of December. That's our next museum winter talk, and further information on the Glamorgan website tomorrow. But on behalf of everyone on the call, Hempy, we wish you as well all the very best in the coming months, and I'm sure your down-to-earth common sense, all the things that you've shared with us this evening, are going to stand you in very, very good stead in the coming months. So as far as the formal bit of this evening is concerned, many thanks, Hempy, and whilst they're on the call as well, best wishes to your family as well in the coming months. I know a lot of people saying how nice it is during the winter months to actually have a chance to have these talks and to stay in touch with friends, and especially at this time with all the horrible COVID things going on. So I'll finish off by saying Nadolig Llawen, Merry Christmas, and Blwyddyn Newydd, our Happy New Year, and we wish you all the very best. And
thank you, Torgan.
Thanks very much, David.
Thanks.
Okay, if Frosty or Jack, as you were referring to him, if Frosty could stop the recording.